Welcome back to another episode, all. Throughout this episode, I'm going to be discussing something called music therapy, which can be a substitute for the problematic and controversial intervention of Applied Behaviour Analysis, ABA. Those of us who are critics of Applied Behaviour Analysis, such as myself, we are often presented with the question by parents, well, what am I supposed to do for my child then? They go asking, they don't know of any other solutions besides ABA. Because ABA is like the default position. It is. But music therapy is actually extremely effective and has many more advantages compared to ABA, concerning safety, well-being, emotional well-being, development, and so on. First of all, in a music therapy session, the session is actually led by the child. The child him or herself leads, and by doing so, that allows the child to keep a sense of autonomy. As soon as you invade someone's autonomy, go restricting it, it sends in pretty destructive directions. By disallowing them a sense of autonomy, it can lead to great selfishness by not allowing them to be who they actually are, but trying to make them who you may want them to be. And the session rather goes in a stage where it begins, where there'll be a music therapist who's there, and he or she will play a piece of music which sounds rather inviting, which is like an invitation to invite the child into the room, but unlike ABA, the music therapist will not close in on the child. Because another comparison and complaint lots of people have made about ABA is it's very like grooming, applied behaviour analysis. What ABA therapists do is they come in and they observe the child and they see what does the child like, and then they confiscate from the child what the child likes, and then they'll go saying to the child, if you'll do this for us, we'll give you this and let you play on it for 10 minutes, or something like that. Then they'll take it back from them. So the autistic kids who go through ABA don't actually get to do what they enjoy to do in their free time. They can only do what they enjoy during a therapeutic session. And that's one of the downsides of ABA, and one of the upsides of music, is the individual actually gets to be an autonomous human being. And during the session, the music therapist will sometimes either play bits of music and the child might imitate back. So sometimes the musician will play a piece of music and they're often doing it together with each other one-on-one. It's like a one-to-one session where they'll play music together, have little child instruments, and such as it, ones where one can hold one side and they'll shake it together. The child might have the head turned away and not making eye contact, but just wandering around the room like that while still doing this. But then eventually they might bring the head onto the therapist, and this is like improving towards making communication and interaction. So they'll do that, just generally play like rock something, perhaps hit a few drums while the child's head might be looking around, observing the place, seeing what's around them. Because autistic kids, due to their anxiety, they often do want to know what's around them. They're always on this high alert, and by being on this high alert, it actually causes adrenaline to flow through the system, and if that's done too regularly, it can be harmful. And the therapeutic session will usually end with rather a goodbye piece of music. Goodbye and I'll see you again kind of pace that the therapist will play. So like say, you're welcome to go now, and so on, and I'll see you again. That's rather how a therapeutic session goes in music therapy. That's how it's played out. But why is it so effective, How can it affect a person's neurology? How can it make a person communicate? How can it make them so calm and less anxious? Exactly. This is what applied behaviour analysis therapists criticise. They're critics of music therapy. That will criticise it and think, no, it shouldn't be insured. But this is just another one of the advantages of music therapy, is music therapy actually works with the physiology of the person, actually acknowledges the biological factors, while applied behaviour analysis only focuses on the surface. It doesn't pay attention to the nervous system. Our nervous system is like our body's main communicator, as it sends messages to the body and to the brain, and it goes all ways. And so on, by everything around you, all the way from sound, from what you see, all your physical senses, and so on through the hypothalamus in the top of your mind, your brain up there, it will send them in, the brain will send them to the nervous system, and the nervous system will instruct your body what to do. It will. And by doing so, it can reshape your muscles, it can deactivate the immune system, it can go sending messages to muscles, telling them to either speed up, slow down, it can overstimulate or understimulate someone, and it can hinder certain chemical messages being sent to another or enable them to be sent. And in music, so the sound that comes at them, that is coming at the kids, actually has a positive effect on them. As some music can be very calming, and with a child being anxious, an autistic child, they come in, and because the therapist is not closing in on them, but is back, just playing a bit of music, a calming down sort of one, the anxiety is going down of the individual. And as I assume you all know, it's easier to learn when you're in a calmer state. When you're more calm, it's easier to learn. So that's another advantage right there in music therapy, is we actually get the child into a good emotional state, first of all, before trying to make them learn anything, and so on. Such if you think about everything around you, you've got a relationship with it all. Such as music therapy has an effect on your sleep, so it's not just related to autism as an autism intervention, but it goes with all of your health, everything around us. All the sound you hear, like you might hear a top clicking, that's music. The birds outside when they're making noises, that can be seen as music. You're surrounded by music, you are, and so on, and that you always feel it influencing your emotions. But then your emotional state influences your physiology then influences your brain, and everything about you is affected by the music itself. Such as you may find the doctor advise you, if you've got insomnia, the doctor might advise you, put some white noise on during the night, put your bedroom to a certain temperature, sleep down in a certain body posture. So see that your movement, your posture, the temperature, sound, all coming in at night, all influences and can improve your sleep. And it's the same with autistic kids on anything they're trying to learn. It can actually improve that. Music can. Because music is actually more powerful than many people assume. Such as I've already mentioned the calming down parts. Such as some therapists during the session there's actually mirrors inside the room. And so on, so the child might be staring at the mirror, and by doing so, they actually see the therapist. So they're looking at a person, but not the actual person. And that's like a step towards communication and interaction. So sometimes the music therapist will perhaps think about the child's heart rate, because your heart rate they begin to hear the beats in the music there. So even your heart rate, the pace your heart's pumping at, actually is more music. It's got the rhythm to it. So just about all the sounds around you have rhythm. And then it depends on the kind of emotional expression coming out of the music by the musician, by the music therapist. And then if they actually play music that the child likes, this takes into the part of developing a relationship. And then here's another one of the positive parts about music therapy, is rather than grooming on the child, the music therapist actually keeps a therapeutic relationship. They don't go pretending that they are best friends with each other. They actually keep a realistic therapeutic relationship. But ABA therapists try grooming the child as if they are best friends. And when the therapist goes, finishes the work and so on, the child's wondering, where's my best friend gone? So the therapist, once they're gone in ABA, they go and leave the children so depressed. The child thinks they've lost their best friend. So that's why this grooming that ABA does is not healthy. So once the two main factors of attraction of who we're attracted to is familiarity and similarity. So as the child becomes more familiar with the therapist, him or herself, and that's one factor that helps them develop the relationship with each other. And then the other one is similarity. So if the music therapist finds a piece of music that the child likes, both of them like music, so there's the similarity, but they can both make a connection. It helps them make a social connection, even though the child may have some social difficulties. It helps them make that social connection, and because the therapist has not invaded the autonomy, the child is competent about the music, and by having that relationship, they've got a sense of belonging, relatedness, and this is what produces what's called intrinsic motivation, where the child is now actually motivated to learn. They actually want to do the learning. So unlike ABA, you don't have to keep bribing the child. In music therapy, the child actually wants to do it. But in ABA, they just bribe the kids to do what they want the kids to do. And that's another downside in ABA, is ABA is a control system. And once you mess with a person's autonomy, belonging, or relatedness, and competence, it sends them in very destructive directions to things like developing post-traumatic stress disorder. It sends them in destructive directions when you mess with that. Just know, autonomy doesn't mean that anything goes. So if you want an autonomous child, you don't have to let your child do everything they want to do. That's not autonomy. Autonomy is basically a sense of self, where you've got control. You're more like the origin of your life, and not like some pawn on a chessboard that someone's controlling. You're actually the origin of your life. And that's what these kids should be, is they get treated as the origins of their lives. They're the ones leading the music session. The music being played is the music that they like. And then the therapist may just play for a short period of time, and then they'll ask the children something like, say, do you want to play more? And then this develops a yes or no thing, where they can even say yes or no by pushing a button, by pointing to an image, and it actually helps the kids learn things like gestures, sound language, and it helps them develop a form of communication which others can understand. So it helps with social skills, communication, emotional regulation, self-regulation. It's helped with relationships, and so music therapy actually is very effective. Just going to read out a few experiences from people who've gone through music therapy of what they have to say, of what situation they were in to begin with, what happened during the music therapy, and what the end results were. Because another issue with ABA is they don't actually go showing you what happens during the session. You see the child at the beginning in one way, you see the child at the end of the intervention, and all of their evidence, as they call it, is based on just those two, the beginning and the end. They don't actually say, is there any evidence for the process of it? So ABA hasn't investigated the safety of does anything harmful happen in the process of the intervention. So that's another part of where ABA lacks. And other scientists actually call behaviourists, rather than calling them scientists, they call them Scientologists, which I don't think is a pretty amusing joke. But yeah, because of other scientists in like neurobiology, biopsychology, they actually see behaviourism as more of a religion. They say it's more like an article of faith. They do. Right, so the few studies on therapeutic sessions. Just now, the names which are called are anonymous. As I'm reading from the National Autistic Society, they've replaced the individuals' names. So the individuals spoken about don't want you to know who they actually are. The first one, Rosie, 7 years old, spent much of the day apparently isolated from the world around her, either curled up quietly or jumping around seemingly randomly, whilst making high-pitched vocal sounds. The therapist provided music to precisely match her movements and the expressive sounds that she made, jumping, banging, screaming, or whimpering. Rosie began to vocalise in the pitch of the music, and when the therapist followed her lead, she experienced a new sense of control and connection with the world around her. She began to give eye contact and interact, firstly with the therapist and then with other people in her life. The music therapist is now looking to support Rosie to develop her vocal sounds into spoken words. Why? We are all innately musical. Rhythm is evident in our heartbeat, our walking, running, and breathing. We use pitch and tone for expression in our voices, from laughing to crying. Even for a person who is highly isolated, these musical elements are always there and offer a powerful channel for communication. Where it says about connection and so on, I'm just going to read something of where I think that humans should be connected to the rest of nature. And this is something all the way back from the 18th century. I quote, Alexander von Humboldt, the 18th century scientist and explorer, world famous in his time, was the first to explain the fundamental functions of the forest for the ecosystem and climate, claiming that the world is a single, interconnected organism. This is the concept of nature as we know it today. According to von Humboldt, everything, to the smallest creature, has its role and together makes the whole, in which humankind is just one small part. End quote. So as we are see the whole world connected together as one, this even supports that. So we're actually going back more towards nature. I'll talk about a vicious cycle that's going on a little later. The next case, Ewan and James. Ewan, 12, and James, 14, were both very interested in making music on their own. Ewan made intricate patterns of melody and chords on a keyboard. James sang the SpongeBob song repeatedly throughout the day. They could both become fixated on their own music, finding it hard to deviate, and they both had difficulty with interpreting social cues involved in direct interaction. By working together in music therapy, using percussion and also music technology, Ewan and James found they could be united in a common rhythm. They could have fun sharing a musical dialogue that doesn't rely on direct eye contact or close proximity. They ultimately created their own song that was presented at a school concert. Why? Music is a social experience and focuses on what we share as human beings. Rhythm, pitch, and playfulness are cues to communication from early infant interaction and throughout our life. Next, I'll just do two more. Sanjeev, 16, found it very difficult to transition from one space to another and often became stuck, feeling highly anxious and overwhelmed by sensory stimulation. The therapist matched rhythmic beats to his movements. Move your feet to the beat. And through rhythm, Sanjeev discovered a new sense of stability and order. This enabled him to move fastly into the therapy room and eventually to transition smoothly and with confidence around the school. He now taps or drums patterns on his knees to comfort and focus him. Why? Musical patterns, from strongly rhythmic to flexible and loose, can provide what an autistic person needs to help them to regulate their thoughts and brain processes, creating more coherent and adaptable responses to the world around them. Last one, Harry. Harry, 37 years old, became distressed at regular points throughout the day and tried to hurt himself and often hit out towards others. Staff at his care home felt that this related to his memories of traumatic childhood experiences, but Harry didn't have the language ability to relate what had happened to him. By working in a one-to-one session with the music therapist, Harry used instruments and his vocal sounds to express himself each week. He was supported to communicate and process his feelings of sadness, anger, and pain. He was always calm and settled after his music therapy sessions, and increasingly, throughout the rest of his week, he was able to take part in more activities and social events. Staff felt that ongoing music therapy sessions significantly improved the quality of Harry's life. Why? Music is an emotional language and offers a directness of expression that can bypass cognitive processes involving thought and spoken words. It can enable a deep level of emotional support. There's a few experiences. Now, concerning emotional, the emotional atmosphere around you, once again, influences your physiology. I'm just going to read something from a book about where I say that all of us are interconnected with the rest of nature. I quote, "The interrelatedness of seemingly isolated organisms has now been discovered even in the lives of trees that form living networks, communicating through electrical impulses akin to animal and human nervous systems, hormones, chemical signals and scents. As an article in Smithsonian Magazine reports, trees of the same species are communal and will often form alliances with trees of other species. Peter Warholven, the German forester who has become well known for popularising such information, wittingly calls it the Wood Wide Web. But our own individual minds and bodies are intimately linked in fairly simple to grasp. Less obvious but no less true is the fact that the same body minds are in many ways shaped, in the first place and throughout our lives, by factors external to us. Although modern medicines focus on the individual organism and its internal processes isn't run as such, it misses something vital: the pivotal influence of the mental, emotional, social, and natural environments in which we live. Our biology itself is interpersonal. The concept of interpersonal neurobiology was introduced some years ago by Dr. Daniel Siegel, a psychiatrist, researcher, and prolific author. Like myself and many of our colleagues, Dr. Siegel had become uncomfortable with the limitations of his education. When I was in medical school, he writes, many of the fine teachers we had approached their patients and their students as if they had no centre of inner experience, no subjective internal core we might call our mental life. It was as if we were just bags of chemicals and bodily organs without a self, without a mind. He sensed that both research and practice lacked a consensus definition of health, and startlingly, in the mental health field, lacked even a shared agreement of what mind is, let alone a shared view of the relationship of mind and brain. Recruiting co-workers in medicine, neurology, psychiatry, psychology, anthropology, sociology, history, physiology, biology, physics, and related disciplines that study the human experience. He set out to explore what such a consensus might look like. The team's findings confirmed that our brains and minds are not independent operators, functioning in isolation from other brains and minds. In fact, nothing about us, mental or physical, can be comprehended apart from the many-faceted milieu in which we exist. We can perhaps treat human biology as strictly self-contained in an artificial setting like a medical laboratory or pathology theatre, but not in real life. Interpersonal neurobiology is both aware of understanding the world through many disciplines, and it is also the reality of our interconnected nature, Dan told me in an interview. My amendment is to remove the neuro prefix, leaving us with the broader interpersonal biology, which places not only the brain and nervous system under the interpersonal banner, but our entire mental physical makeup. End of quote. So, in that, even the emotional atmosphere around us, our minds themselves are interconnected, just as our thought, and then the whole world as one organism. For if I take trees again, for example, we have a relationship with the green life around us. We breathe out the carbon dioxide, and then the trees take that in, feed on that, and then the trees release oxygen, and we consume the oxygen. One of us won't survive without the other. So everything in this world does play its own place, does have a role, which contributes towards our survival. So Altogether, everything around us, we are all just one. All of us, our minds are one mind, our environments are just one mind. As I've spoken before, it's the environment that switches genes on and off. Such as, I would like to quickly point out that autistic people say those are oversensitive to sound. I would like to point out that when they're listening to music at quite a high volume, they tend not to get overstimulated. They don't get overstimulated by this high volume music. But say if you just dropped a pencil onto the floor and the pencil hit the floor, that'll be much quieter, but the autistic person would get so disturbed by it. So why would an autistic person get so disturbed by a quiet noise but not loud music? Because in this case, the music, as I've said, affects the physiology, and so does the pencil. But as we go through this, is the pencil hitting the floor might have been an unexpected sound. So it's gone with it into the neurocognitive functioning, linked together with the environment, the physical senses, with the nervous system, and so on, sending the hormones, the chemical messengers throughout the body, and that unexpected sound, combined with the anxiety that autistic kids can be in, activates the hypersensitivity, switches it on. But then when they calm down through the music, it switches back off. So it's not actually due to the volume of the sound, it's more to do with all of it together in oneness. Your immune system, nervous system, mind, brain, the environment are all connected as one. We are not separate from each other. We are not separate from nature as anthropocentrism claims. I'll be doing an episode about the anthropocentric view in a later episode. Because that is another big problem going on. Now, I mentioned about a vicious cycle that we have going on. Where the book I quoted from mentioned medicine. We keep finding people mention looking for cures and so on. There actually already is a cure. But because of this vicious cycle, people are refusing to actually accept the cure. As time's gone on, humans have shifted further and further and further away from nature. Such as music is natural, and so on. But we have drifted so far away from nature. It mentioned artificial laboratories, artificial things, but our world actually now is an artificial world. We've separated ourselves from nature, and it goes in this cycle. When we separate from nature, a new disease arises, and then we go demanding a cure to that disease, as in medicine was, and it goes saying up. So we drift further away from nature by going by medicine instead of actually looking at causation and moving back towards nature. So then they've moved further away from nature, another disease arises, they demand a cure, so they go doing all this isolated research, and then that's took up consuming so much of the earth that we've damaged it, damaged our relationship with nature, that then another disease has risen, and it just goes round in this cycle. We cause a disease, we demand a cure, and as we're looking for the cure because of all we do, we cause another disease, then we demand another cure, cause another disease, another cure, and it just goes round and round. People are under the illusion that health-wise, things are so well improved in our day-to-day. But if that was the case, why are we looking for more cures? Why are over 70% of the US on antidepressants? Why are we requiring more and more medications to be produced? Why are we requiring more and more therapeutic approaches? Why are we needing all of these health services? Why are the health services increasing if our health is increasing? If our health was increasing as a collective worldwide, we wouldn't need more health support, we'd need less. So you should be able to see that the further away from nature humans move, the more we separate ourselves from it, the less healthy we become. Such as autism being primarily genetic, animals possess the same genes as us. So why don't we see these diseases in non-human animals? They've got the exact genes that are associated with these disabilities, disorders, comorbidities. The reason we don't see these diseases so dominant in the rest of wildlife is wildlife has not separated itself from nature. So animals are actually still going by what we can call animal nature. People mention human nature, but what is human nature? Say if I talk about greed, some people have said to me, oh, greed, it's just human nature. But is it really? Why isn't kindness human nature? Why don't we say that? So what is human nature to begin with? It's the natural human, who we are naturally as humans, not this artificial world where you pretend to be someone you're not. Not this world where we have separated ourselves from nature. So if we produce this big cycle by separating ourselves from nature through an anthropocentric viewpoint, which makes people think literally that humans are the most supreme over everything else on the earth, even though we need everything else on the earth. So music therapy altogether, by addressing the oneness, addressing emotional regulation, the emotional well-being, the nervous system, the hormones in the body, sending messages to the inside and outside of the body, actually making connections with children rather than actually grooming on them. It's got such great advantage, does music therapy, by actually acknowledging the human as a whole. And that's what makes it better, more scientific, and more to do with evidence and health. Because another one of my criticisms of applied behaviour analysis is it is not dependent. It does not base its foundation on health. So it's not about doing the process in a healthy way, ABA. ABA is just behaviour modification. Change a person's behaviour in whatever way you like. You don't have to do it healthfully. You don't have to care about the emotions. And that's why so many autistic people are actually diagnosed with PTSD. They went through ABA, but their emotions were not acknowledged, were not addressed, but were intentionally ignored. And by doing so, they caused a trauma on the inside and stress. And by doing so, it led to mental health issues. So that's one of the main things that I don't like about applied behaviour analysis and why I object. It takes no concern about health, does ABA. So that's why I'll see ones like music therapy as more appropriate, and why I would like it if they could receive insurance, so more parents can have access to that. And the stories which I've just read out from the National Autistic Society. So there's one option that you can do instead of applied behaviour analysis. For those of you with the question, what are we supposed to do then? You could do music therapy, that's one option. I'll share more options in the future, on future episodes. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. If you would like to hear about more interventions, hang around. Keep an eye on the channel and you'll see more come out. Thank you.